the kitchen of intrigue, Curt Jackson and Chris Callow are cooking up a batch of mystery soup.
Each episode serves a new blend of tips, tactics, trends, and tales from the business and design sides of the escape room world.
So grab your spoon, because this episode starts in 3, 2, 1.
Mystery Soup.
Welcome to Mystery Soup, a podcast all about the business and design side of the escape room industry. Chris, why are you shaking your head? Every time.
I love it.
Oh my goodness. Well, today in this episode, we are excited to have two people that I met last year and just are such a joy to be around. We have Rob and Cecilia from Niagara Escapement. How are you two doing?
Doing great.
Good. We're excited to be here.
Thank you for taking the time to do this with us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
So let's just start off with, tell us a little bit about yourself, not necessarily your business, but about who you guys are and maybe how you met.
So in my previous life, I was a factory worker and health and safety professional. And I was into puzzles and games my entire life, but life has weird trajectories. And when someone dragged me to my first escape room, I didn't even want to go. I thought it was going to be confinement and handcuffs. And yes, there's some that are like that. But when I found out it was puzzles, and I remember like the moment the first black light turned on and revealed all this hidden information, I was hooked. I went home and started designing my first escape room that first night. And I got right into it. And then when I had a chance to get into the business, one of my first employees was Cecilia. And then over the years, she took on more and more responsibility. And I started to realize how essential she was to the operation. And when we decided to start a new company, that was a no-brainer that it was going to be her and I doing this together, because everything I don't know how to do, she does. And we work really well together.
Cool.
Yeah, exactly. I started looking for a job back in 2017 and landed on the Crux, another business that we were working with and designing rooms for and stuff. And I've always loved games and stuff as well, and been a big crafter. I really enjoyed building worlds and doing the set design, and learning how to run a business was very interesting, because I thought my life had ended when I stopped working at Tim Hortons. And now here I am, and I couldn't imagine doing anything different.
Nice.
And when we started, it was everything that we didn't know. Like when we'd separated from the previous company, we thought, oh, we've got this. And then every day was like, oh, we didn't know about this. Oh, how does this work? Oh, no. So I think our strongest skills and where we complement ourselves in the business is that ability to learn something. And that sounds really calm. It is not calm. It is panic and swear words and just pulling your hair out. But we end up finding that solution and building systems around it.
Can you guys tell me, so I don't know Niagara Escapement. I was at Niagara Falls this last year, but I did not do any escape rooms when I was there, sadly. We were there for just a short time to go look at the water, which is exactly what I'm going to call it. It was just a bunch of water and it was cold and wet. But tell me a little bit about the origin story of Niagara Escapement.
Yeah, well, speaking on the COVID pandemic, this is definitely the product of that, and the product of it affecting many entertainment businesses. Because like we mentioned before, when we started working together, it was with another company that was an escape room company. But during all of the lockdowns and the changes in the world, especially in Canada, so many businesses were closing their doors, some of them permanently, some of them not so much. And we realized that we no longer wanted to work with the owners of the Crux, and did a split from them to open Niagara Escapement on our own, because we wanted to pursue all things nerdy and have more of a creative outlet than we were allowed to have with other partners in the business.
Yeah, but my former partners, they were, those habitual entrepreneurs. They were always starting up new businesses, whatever they thought was going to be the big thing. They were into internet cafes, and then they had like the clearance stores. Then they got into escape rooms, and they were great business people, but they really focused on that return on investment over, in our opinion, the quality of the experience for the customers. They were just more than happy that the bodies were going through the door. If they had bad reviews, it didn't seem as important. And that was the most important thing, that everyone that walked in the door loved it. So for us, even before COVID, there was already some, hey, we have a difference of opinion on how this should operate. And then COVID just prevented that opportunity for us to split. We found another partner who's on the same wavelength as us. And, we always wanted to do more than just crank those bodies through the door. We wanted them to really enjoy what they did and feel that they spent their money well with us.
Right. Right. Well, tell us a little bit about your games. We'll get into all the other stuff later because you do a lot, but let's specifically talk about the escape rooms.
No worries. So I've been designing escape rooms for 8 years. Cecilia joined us shortly after we opened. So, we basically designed and built 15 rooms over the last 8 years. And because we're owner operated and we're not sitting at the cottage just taking the cash in, we run a lot of those rooms. For a good part of the beginning of Niagara Escapement, we ran pretty much all the rooms because we didn't have very many rooms. You're not going to hire staff without that kind of income. So we really pay attention to what works with the customers, what doesn't work. We try to get that feedback from them. And I think one of the primary things is we always look for themes that we can have fun with. And I think a lot of times in the escape room industry, the rooms take themselves a little bit too seriously. And I get it with horror rooms and things, but honestly,
Right.
why did the serial killer leave clues for the padlocks around his murder den? It doesn't make any sense at all. So we try to embrace that silliness and that sense of fun in the games. And the other big thing that sets us up for our design philosophy is the first room I ever designed, we ended up winning awards for, and it was rave reviews, but it was bad that happened because it was a hard room, like a really, really hard room, but the enthusiasts loved it. So it was getting all these fantastic reviews. But when mom and dad show up with their two 12-year-olds, they can't do anything. It's not fun for them. So we really tried to change our approach so that the games are more accessible and the puzzles are more accessible. And if you're an enthusiast, we find that they still respect and enjoy that. And we make up for the fact that they're more accessible by giving you a lot of them to do. As you played our rooms, our end of the world is just loaded with stuff for people to do.
Right.
And we tried to focus on that sense of fun. So we have our Easy Bake Coven, which is a Hansel and Gretel room. We have our End of the World, which is a silly take on the end of the world and the apocalypse coming. We made a honeymoon suite room because we're Niagara Falls, but instead of making it a romantic love nest, it's a sleazy motel and a gangster has hired you to steal something for him. And even our Christmas room, we went for like a cutesy, creepy gothic. Basically, there's a family, they're all dead, and you're getting the ghost or Secret Santa presents. So we tried to embrace that silliness right from the beginning of it.
That's awesome.
Do you have the champagne glass bed in your honeymoon suite? Like
The headboard is heart-shaped.
Okay,
It's actually a heart. We really
Perfect.
wanted to put a
Awesome.
heart-shaped jacuzzi in there, but
Yes.
unfortunately,
Out of the
jacuzzis
budget.
are really hard to build. You can't paper mache those.
I love it.
And that's Cecilia is a great asset in our set design. And we just look at what's going to stick in someone's mind. We really try to focus on color palettes in the rooms, kind of like a graphic novel. So when you're in one room, we're using 3 main colors throughout everything. And then you go to another room and it's got a whole different color feel to it. And it's fun when we're watching the rooms. Our Christmas room, when I'm watching it on the monitor, it's like, this is Scooby-Doo. Like the colors, the shapes, everything feels like Scooby-Doo when I'm watching the room.
Nice. Are you haunt people? Do you go to haunts?
Yeah, my family and I are definitely big horror people in general, and we've always gone to all of the local haunts around Halloween time and whatnot. But I think we're definitely more interested in the silly, sarcastic side of the haunt. Like Nightmare on Elm Street is one of my favorite franchises because it does not take itself seriously whatsoever. And I think our rooms kind of follow that. It sounds like maybe it might be scary, but it's definitely more silly.
Well, part of that is that accessibility thing too, because as soon as it's a haunt, you've eliminated half of your audience. When you make it a silly game, even the haunt people can come and play. And I think market-wise, in the US, haunts are much more of a popular attraction than they are in Canada. Americans like to be scared. You can tell by their elections. It's very, very clear you have a different taste for anxiety and stress than we do. And I think because of that feeling I had with not wanting to play my first escape room, because I thought it was going to be something scary, that it's been this conscious decision I don't want to. When my former partners wanted me to design a serial killer room, we made the world's lousiest serial killer. You're in his mom's basement. And like he's just really bad at being a serial killer. So we just took all the tropes, turned it on its head, and had some fun with it.
I think the escape room movies were
Oh,
good and bad, right? One, they're good because they
yes.
get kind of that, escape rooms, and bad because, yeah, now it gives the impression that they're all scary, that they're all
Mhm.
horror kind of
Absolutely.
rooms.
And
Uh,
burning down your escape room is bad.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Could you imagine the budget to build a room like what they portray in those
Oh,
movies? My
right?
goodness. Oh, Lord. The second one, the whole first part takes place on a train.
You wish you
Yeah.
had that budget.
Wasn't like the escape room movie. 1 star.
Right. How many
We
square
f-
footage are your rooms?
Well, our whole building is just under 5,000. When we were the Crux, we had the landlord build out 5 shells for our escape rooms. We wanted them separated by hallways so there was no sound bleed between the rooms, because that's a really negative experience in most escape rooms when you can hear the other people playing.
True.
And then we'd already built out 4 of the spaces, and I had this other space left. Realized, oh, I have no storage space. I can't build a full-size escape room and still have things in the building. And that's when we really hit on that. Let's make this little easy bake coven room. This little tiny game for 2 to 4 people. We'll make it really cozy and tight. So that's our smallest room that we have, and our largest one that we have right now. Wow, that would be end of the world, and that's not very large either. We split up the throughput through multiple rooms. Our biggest, our 2 biggest spaces, we turned one into the party rooms, and the other one is only half of that is Christmas right now.
Yeah, because 5,000 feet is a good size.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah, 5,000
but the
square
rooms
feet.
themselves aren't very large, and it really
Right.
helped focus our design philosophy. So a lot of the bigger venues, and when we go to Toronto a lot to play games, and you go in and there's this massive set piece, and it looks like a Hollywood movie set, and there's 2 puzzles in this room, and then
Yep.
the cool door opens, and you're in another huge set, and there's 2 puzzles in the room, and it's really easy to gate your puzzles and get the flow because you're not even in the same space as the next puzzles. When you're playing, like we had one room the one time, it was 400 square feet, and my partner said, make a game for 8 people.
Mhm.
We really learned
Yeah.
how to utilize the tech and reveals in the room to make up for the fact that we had this small space, because you still want that wow of, oh, I didn't realize this was going to open, but
Sure.
you're a lot tighter. So I think it made us better designers because we're building within this smaller constraint. And we try to make it clear, like, these are not for 12 people. Like, my personal opinion is almost no escape room is for 12
Yes.
people, but
Yes.
that's everyone else has got their own business model. We focus on those
Mhm.
smaller group games because we know we can do that well.
Yeah. Nice.
We figured it out, Curt. I'm not a chicken about scary rooms. I'm Canadian. That's what it is.
That's it. That's it.
I love it. Look, can you all take us through a little bit of that design process when you're kind of creating that game? What does the design process look like?
We get this question a lot, even just from people that are coming through to play the rooms. Of course, when they find out that you designed the game, you become this celebrity for the moment in their minds. And our typical answer for them has always been drugs and alcohol. Lots of drugs and alcohol. But that's not true. It's simply not. In fact, that would probably hinder the
Right.
process. So we definitely start with the theme that we want to build. What kind of things do we want to explore? What kind of things would other people want to explore? And what would actually fit well into the physical space that we have available? Because like we've said, we don't use very much space in our rooms. So then it goes to how many players are we trying to accommodate based on our activity over the last little bit? What are the typical group sizes that are coming through? Do we already have props that we can create puzzles with for a theme we'd like to explore? Can we easily make some of them? And then we know the theme. So we start to think about, okay, what would actually be in a room or something, a scenario with that theme that's attached to it. In a witch's cottage, you're going to see a cauldron and a fully stocked apothecary cabinet. And in an end of the world bunker, you're going to be messing with exposed pipes and powering things up to make the bunker what you need it to be to live out the end of the world. So how do you get players to interact with each other, but also the space that you're actually trying to portray to them to move that story forward?
Yeah.
Like, this part of the process she talks about, we throw tons of puzzle ideas at it and we start making things. And sometimes you can't make the thing that you want, so that gets tossed out. But I would say that the final stages are the worst. You're putting all these things together and you're trying to see how they're going to flow, and you realize, oh no, this doesn't work in this order, or this puzzle here doesn't work at all. Like that last week of a build, I am at my most stressed. It's like caffeine and aspirin. The Christmas room was hilarious because I also got really sick in November, and they refused to delay Christmas, so I had to get this room done.
So rude.
And it's just
Ridiculous.
it feels like the mad science where you're just sitting there and it's like, how do I pull this together at the last, like that's this last stage, this last building stage. And I honestly, to this day, I have no idea how someone sits down, writes out a plan for an escape room, and builds that escape room. I don't get it, because to me, it's this constant iterative process that even as you're putting it in the space and you see what it looks like, it's like, oh, here's a better idea for that. Let's change that to this thing here. When we were opening End of the World, we did a couple play tests, and one of the puzzles was like, oh, this is too hard. And Cecilia's like, I told you that was too hard. 4 months ago, I told you that was too hard. And she was right. So we ripped it out and replaced it with the dumbest puzzle in the world. And I was so happy that I did, because the end of the game now is all fast, small puzzles. And it's already overwhelming. So to get that pace going, but you can't really get the feel for how that pace is going to go until you see it in the space and get those first couple test runs on it. My best advice to any designer is do not get married to any of your puzzle ideas. If it's not working, throw it out. Because sometimes that last minute puzzle you come up with is better than anything you planned for. And I think it's because you've been percolating this story and these puzzles for so long, and that sometimes there's some puzzles just lying buried in your subconscious. And the only way to get it out is through that pure panic of the final install, or drugs and alcohol, one of the two.
Have recently been going through all of our files and stuff to make sure that we have backups for absolutely everything and secondary versions of everything. And we have found so many old ideas. I actually printed off the very first rundown that we made for Easy Bake Coven, because absolutely nothing from it made it into the game. And I think it's hilarious.
Oh, wow.
We were so in love with these ideas 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's actually funny.
That's
one of the
good to hear.
inspirations for many of our rooms is our previous partners. We designed all of our rooms in Niagara Falls, but we had multiple locations, and they would just buy the games for those. And we'd go play these games that they bought and think, this is bad. This is just a bad room. And then I started in my head thinking, well, how do I redesign this room that they bought and make it better? And then I'd present it to them here's how we can fix this game. They're like, no. We're already selling tickets for this. So then we'd retheme it a little bit and go do it somewhere else. So we had this voodoo game that we were trying to turn into a creepy cabin. And that's what ended up becoming the Witch's Hut. As soon as we got that break from, it's not a creepy cabin, it's silly. It's a silly take on Hansel and Gretel. It's not something to scare people.
That's the difference between somebody who's just in it for the business and somebody who has a love for escape rooms.
I think sometimes our love is too much because we spend so much time on the detail. Our builds are slow. It's Cecilia and I are the core team, and then we have 2 other people that help us build the rooms. And it's been the same 4 people for 8 years. I don't know how to delegate things. You come up with these puzzle ideas, and I try to get someone to build it for you, and it's like, they don't understand what I'm saying. I have to do this myself. So then you learn how to do basic carpentry, how to do wiring, how to do technology, all those things, just because you can't express properly how to get someone else to build it for you.
University of
great
YouTube.
With Cecilia. Yeah, exactly. It's great with Cecilia because she gets that stuff and we just riff off each other, and we're here. I don't have to worry about when the contractor's coming in. Right. I could pay someone to do it, or we could just do it right now.
I don't even trust most other people to do it. I'm going to end up coming in and fixing it up when they're done anyhow. So you know what? I might as well do the thing. It's not like I don't enjoy the work anyhow.
Yeah. Do you have a budget that you try to stick within for each game?
I don't know what that word means. Yeah.
Because we do most of it ourselves, we're not really it's a time budget, realistically, is what it is. Because at the end of the day, the escape room should pay for itself in the long run. The tech is going to cost a little bit of money, but we're not paying carpenters because we're doing all the drilling and hammering and building, and we're not paying painters or prop builders because we're doing all of the painting and paper mache and prop builds.
Right.
We're not saying
right.
this is the best advice for our escape room.
Oh no, unless you want to make this your life, don't follow in our footsteps.
Right.
We have friends of ours in the business, and we follow all their feeds, and they're so organized, and they have this great craft team, like an entire prop building team, and they plan out what they're going to do for the next like 2 years, and they stick to the plan. It's like, we're going to change our mind about what we're doing next week.
Yeah. You're using bubble gum to keep things together, and and the tech, you are still kind of learning the tech, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a perpetual learning. When I started out and I got the offer from my previous partners to join their team, I may have oversold myself on my skill sets. So I ended up, I framed and drywalled the room myself. I installed doors and windows. I knew none of this stuff. I'm a nerd. I play video games. Like, that's my life. When they showed up, they found out that I was actually using 3-inch nails and hammering in every nail to frame the room, because I didn't even think that there was a power tool that could do that thing. I was also in shape back then too, so that was a little bit different. And when it came to tech, one of my partners showed me how to wire up a 12-volt automotive relay. So just once the power goes through it, it opens or closes, and it opens a switch over here. So we had a couple of puzzles that did that. And then we'd get some Arduino tech for our next room, but they were never as reliable as I wanted. And I think that was, from my perspective, a failure to describe exactly how this thing worked. So then I try to figure out the workaround on it. And, like you said, the YouTube videos. And I'm not a video learner, I'm a reader, and nobody actually does tech stuff anymore. So there's a bit of a challenge. So a lot of it's just experimenting. And then you start to grasp onto the electronics, and at its core, a relay is really, really simple. It's just an on and off loop. That's it. So you start making a little bit more complex chains. The first version of Easy Bake Coven had 55 big chunky relays behind it and the most insane spaghetti wiring to make it all work. But it worked. It was not elegant at all. So then someone turned me on to, hey, you should use a PLC to drive this thing. So the industry I worked in, everything was PLC controlled. So I bought one of those, learned how to program it, rewired everything. Okay, this is working great. But now we're looking at, well, what's the next iteration? That's not feasible for us. That's not a reliable long-term solution. So diving into more Arduino programming, and then someone referred me to Alistair's Playful Technology, talked about using Node-RED. It's called Node-REDscape. And I started watching all of his videos and trying to learn from that. Now, the problem, Alistair's wonderful. However, I don't understand most of what he's saying, but I understand the logic behind it. So I've been kind of going and translating everything into regular English, and have developed this. We built our own hint system using Raspberry Pis. All of our new rooms are going towards Raspberry Pi controls with Arduino inputs and outputs on it. It's really, really simple. You can make it simple. Let's put it that way. I'm sure people can make it really complicated and really awesome. We get the Arduino to send a text message to the Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi sends a text message to the Arduino, and all the communication goes that way. So it's funny that I found myself where I have this like intermediate to advanced coding understanding, but I don't know how to solder the pins on because I don't have any of the basic skill sets.
Yeah.
And to me, building out the tech and figuring out those coding solutions, that's my escape room game now. Like, I like playing escape rooms, but damn, I love building them. And that tech part becomes this cool little crazy puzzle where, again, sitting in this little room with a little light over top of your work as you curse and swear and mutter, and you look like that crazy guy. You look like that serial killer that they're trying to present in these escape room movies.
You're all about the set design, Cecilia. That's your that's your thing.
I wish that I could assist more with tech. In fact, I've even helped him with some talks and watched plenty of videos and stuff on it. I cannot for the life of me wrap my head around tech. I can override it, no problem. Need to know how to do that. I can fix it every so often if something goes wrong. But yeah, my love child here is definitely building the props, making the sets, installing the things where I feel like they should go. I've always loved me a little bit of interior design and dark Gothic architecture stuff. So the silly, sarcastic, dark stuff that we do fits in perfectly with my aesthetic. And I've always been a renter, so I don't get to decorate my house.
Do you spend time at antique stores and stuff? Looking for the perfect.
We
She's a
spend
thrifter.
so much time in thrift stores. Last year, when we finished building Honeymoon Suite, so the year before, actually, I had set myself up with a goal to not go into any thrift stores for the entire year because
my
we weren't
goodness.
building in a room that we needed props for. We already had all of the props for the last Christmas. We knew what we were doing with them. There were very minimal things, but I am a thriftaholic through and through. Love antique stores, love betting, not betting, auctions.
Oh,
Like, give me
auctions.
dead
Yeah,
people's
yeah, yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
I want
I,
all of the dead old lady things.
I think from that, the thrift store antiquing though is we've kind of evolved out of that secondhand prop escape room because we
Yeah.
want to build our own world. So we're crafting everything pretty much custom. We found a couple cool
Gotcha.
artists to work with. So, I had a puzzle I wanted to make out of a clock. Well, I'm not going to buy a clock. I'm just going to have someone make the clock because the clock I buy, we're going to have to retrofit anyhow. And
Mm.
it's going to break because the stuff you buy for home isn't designed for 100 people a day pushing on it, thinking it's a secret door.
Mhm.
True.
So it's mostly about customizing it, and that brings us even more into that. This feels like I'm playing in a graphic novel versus I'm playing in a secondhand shop.
Mm.
The original escape rooms, that's what it was. You walked in there and it was a bunch of secondhand furniture with hasps on stuff. Now we still do that occasionally with some of our rooms, but our dream goal for all of our future builds is it feels like you're in this different world. And that world isn't our real world, it's this crazy side version of that world.
Gotcha.
When does the Rob YouTube channel come about? Because I have been waiting for the Alistair for Dummies for a long time.
I have talked about it, and when I can carve out free time, I'd love to. It's just that it's that other thing on your plate. What I need is a sidekick that can set all that up and just sit me down, film me, do all the editing, and then I just go away. Because if I get into doing something like that, like everything we get into, it's 100% that becomes the focus. So now I'm looking at redoing the tech for Easy Bake, and it's like, oh, I have this other room I'm supposed to be designing, but I'm playing with this tech. Oh no, this is too cool and fun, and it's hard to turn the brain off of that.
Right.
Y'all have a lot on your plate. I just looking at your website. I mean, you have these board games, you have this nerd cafe, like what just so many other things. Tell me about all the other stuff you guys do just beyond the escape rooms.
Basically, our tagline since becoming Niagara Escapement, and one of the main reasons we wanted to become Niagara Escapement and do this more on our own, is if it's nerdy, we will sell it. And our secondary motto has always been, we want to collect all the nerds and weirdos. So, of course, growing up as a nerdy person that was still relatively social, it was always hard to find a place where I really felt like I wanted to be or I belonged with a group of people that were interested in the same things as me, or people even willing to learn new things. A lot of people are into sports and television and shopping, and I'm not. I want to play games and build things and learn about science and whatnot. So to be able to build this community of enthusiastic and nerdy people for us is an extra on the business and also for our lives. And the games aspect, specifically board games, has always been something that Rob's been a huge fan of. If you want to tell them about your collection, Rob.
Gotcha. Yeah, I got into board games in I got back into board games. Grew up with board games as a kid, of course. And in 1996, I discovered Settlers of Catan at a local store. I saw it set up and I had to buy this thing. Brought it home, played it with my family, played it with my friends, played it hundreds and hundreds of times. I never need to play it again. It's a bad game now in retrospect. But in 1996, this was groundbreaking. And then before you knew it, I had 100 games, then 200 games, and then 1,000 games. And I just had this massive collection of board games. And I'm one of those, I'm sure you guys are the same way. You go through life and you get into different hobbies and you chase them passionately. And I used to be I was a runner and a mountain biker, and I was a rock musician for years, and then board games. And that's what I did. I went to work and I played board games. And I always wanted to have a board game cafe. And I had taken some courses on entrepreneurship and all those things, and I couldn't figure out how to do this cafe thing. And then we got into the escape rooms. That was a bit of I kind of got in that backwards into the business. A friend of mine was big into board games. He was like the first YouTube reviewer of board games, and we'd do cons together. And he brought me to a lot of my first escape rooms and brought me to industry events in the escape room thing, even before I was in the industry. So I met all these people. And then I had these opportunities because I was hanging out with Scott. So the
Thank
escape
you,
rooms was kind of an
Scott.
accident. Thank you, Scott. And it was weird to find this thing that all of a sudden you're good at. And I don't mean playing them, I meant designing them. Like my first forays into designing stuff, it worked. It made sense, and I got this. And as we built, like I said, our first room won awards. It's like, oh, I have this weird talent that apparently not everybody has, and it's my entire wasteful life of playing video games and board games and goofing off just culminated on this. And I'm just so glad I can prove my mother wrong. She can, it leads to nothing. So you're getting to the escape rooms doing that, and we did the escape rooms, and it was this big thing. But then we had this opportunity. Can we do more? Can we take this, 1,000 square feet out front and turn it into a board game cafe? Like realistically, it should be another escape room, but we're going to make this a cafe because we want people to hang out. If you play our escape rooms, like Curt, you came through, you played all of our rooms, and if it wasn't for the podcast and all this other stuff, we'd never see you again until we open another room. But with a cafe model, we can build a community of people, of the kind of people that we want to hang out with, and they have a place to go. When we do our regular board game nights, and every once in a while a new person shows up and they're like, oh, my friends don't like board games, and now they're our friend, and they hang out and they play board games all the time at our store. And we collect all these folks as we go, and all the other stuff that Cecilia's brought to the table for us. We've got the D&D events and D&D camp and things, and it's about just building out a community that you don't get when you run an escape room. And for us, like, that's what I always wanted to have. We kind of did it backwards.
Okay, I've got a few questions. So first of all, when you say Scott Nicholson is who you're referring to, correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Also, you were never into video games? You kind of passed that by?
But not quite the same video. Like, I'm not a Mario guy. I'm not a Zelda guy. Oddly enough, I worked in a factory for 30 years. I like factory games. If it's got conveyor belts and logistics, I am hooked on this thing. I have
But
spent
you were all
so
about
many hours
burger
on
time?
those.
Is that what you're telling us?
Actually, I was, the first generation railroad tycoon civilization back in the 90s when they first hit the scene. And despite, yes, I'm an old guy, but when I was 13 years old, I bought my first computer and taught myself how to program. Like, I've always been into that technical side of things. So I understand that underlying tech in it. And yeah, all those games, Lemonade Stand, Business Sims, those kind of things. So I enjoy video games, but board games is way more of my jam. If I've got another person at the table to play with, that's fantastic. It's much more social then.
When I first moved to Florida, I went to a board game cafe. I didn't know anybody. And I was like, oh, this would be interesting. I'm not a big board game person, but it's because I've never had people to play with necessarily. And so I go and everybody's got their groups. I didn't even know how to try to get into a group or anything like that. I looked around and just talked to the guy at the front, and he's just kind of hop in. I'm like, no, I'm not feeling it. And so I just left. How does like somebody who's new get into that community?
Oh, it's definitely something that happens, especially, I mean, in this nerdy group of people, there's going to be a lot of people with social anxiety, maybe people that don't go out very often and they're more used to sitting at home and playing video games and stuff. And they're like, hey, today I want to go out and make some friends, but they're nervous to approach a table of people who are already playing games. I think one of the funniest conversations that I've had with one of our regulars, who's now one of our friends, was that we were too accommodating when he showed up. Very, very social person, but he didn't have anyone to play with right away. So we left the table that we were already playing with. We already knew all of those people. They were comfortable together. They could have played that game easily as 2 or 3 people. And we sat with him to make sure that he felt welcome. It's like, you guys are way too nice. But we're also not the only ones that will do that. So we have a lot of regulars that are also our friends, and they'll often get up from the game that they're playing when it's not their turn and start teaching people new games and make sure that they're comfortable and explain even how the business model works, to the point where people might think that they're employees.
Right.
And they're not. They're just very welcoming people that want to make friends with these new people that come out. We make sure to learn everybody's names and make it this very, very upbeat social environment.
Fair enough. You also have, besides that, and I assume that it's for the lounge part, but you sell snacks and food and drinks and stuff like that. Is that a good moneymaker as far as business side? No? So, because you always think escape room owners a lot of times will be looking for other things to add, right? And you're like, no, don't do the snack bar.
Well, we do the snack bar because we want the snack bar, because that's kind of what gets people to hang out. From a business perspective, our escape rooms generate 85 to 90% of our revenue. We have a board game retail, we sell alcohol, we sell snacks, we sell all those other craft things. The escape rooms are far and away the revenue generator for us. We run a cafe because we want a cafe. We also don't have the scale. We have 5 tables up front for people to sit at. And most cafes, they make their money by throughput. Get the butts in the chair.
We have 6 tables now.
6 tables. There's a board game cafe in the city over. We love going there. They have wonderful food, cool drinks, and we'll play a little game. But you're not going to hang out and play something substantial because you're not, I don't want to say you're not welcome to, but that's not what they want. They want you to, spend your hour and a half, move on. You're not setting up Gloomhaven while you're hanging out there. You're not going to get into something in depth. And we wanted people to feel comfortable and sit around. You want to come and play board games and you buy 2 teas off me in the 4 hours you're here. I don't care, because that's not my business model. I don't need to upsell you while you're sitting there on things. And many of our regulars barely spend any money at all, but they're part of that social scene and fabric we have.
Yeah.
For escape room people, it's great. You come and you play your room. Hey, let's get a beer, sit down and play a game. So you get a bit of an upsell from it from that business perspective. But, if I looked at what it costs to run it versus what I'm making off of it, I'd be far better off putting in an escape room up front. But we like that social atmosphere.
Sure.
And also, we could be really busy with escape rooms and you walk by and you see nothing because everyone's in their rooms. When we have board gaming events and you see all these people up front, we look like a cool happening spot. You come out of your escape room and there's 3 groups of people playing silly games at the table. Oh, this is a really cool place. Look, people are having fun here doing this other stuff. Just the other night, we had a group playing Dungeons and Dragons up front, a couple tables playing board games, and in the back, one of our local LARPing groups was having a toga party.
Oh, wow.
And then we're running escape rooms at the same time. So you've got all these disparate, interesting, and anyone walking in is like,
we collected all the nerds and weirdos.
Hey, listen, if I'm walking by and I see Rob and Cecilia in there, I know it's a cool happening place. All right. Doesn't need anything else.
But when you look at the cafe, that means you need to have someone behind the counter that's selling those drinks and snacks. Right. And if that's all they're doing and you're paying their wage for that, I'm not sure that you'd sell enough drinks and snacks. If it pays for the front of house, I'm more than happy. Like, that works out great for us. But oftentimes it's Cecilia and I that are the front of the house. We're the ones selling the drinks and the snacks. We're talking to people. We're selling them games. We pop over to teach them how to play a game. And that's the environment we really wanted to make. We love running escape rooms. We love building escape rooms, but it's really nice also being able to host this social community.
Cool.
So do you have any merch then that you sell, like just specifically escape room? I'm a sticker person, so I'm always looking for stickers.
Chris loves stickers.
We should. Cecilia's talked about it.
Well, especially since when Curt came in and he's like, I want a sticker for Easy Bake Coven. I'm like, oh no, I don't have that stuff. However, we don't specifically have like shirts or stickers or anything yet, mainly because our retail space is very limited. So we try to fill it in with board games and the things that speak to what we enjoy doing here. We have had several of our regulars ask us about making them shirts or sweaters, for example, being able to help us kind of advertise while they're out and about or on their way here. I do a lot of handcrafts. I crochet and I do cross stitch and basically any old lady craft that you can think of. I'm doing it while I'm running rooms or sitting at home watching TV. And I've started making little piggies and little gingerbread men that fit in with our last Christmas and Easy Bake Coven game. So we are slightly leaning towards a little bit of merch. Last year, one of our best sellers in the entire cafe was these little ghosts that I made around Halloween time. And I was just selling these tiny little crocheted ghosts with Adopt a Ghost certificates. People could sign their names on them. Young children and single women went woo-woo for them. So we added the ghosts into our Christmas game as well. Now those ghosts sell all year round, but that is definitely the closest thing to merch that we have right now.
Cecilia is like a 65-year-old woman and a 30-year-old person.
100%. And I've always been that way. So I am a grandma in disguise.
I love it. Yeah, well, definitely you should get the merch. That's all I'm saying.
Just don't get silicone bracelets.
The one, oh yeah,
Yeah,
Right,
the Crocs
right.
had
The,
those.
the one thing I have
Hate
always
those.
wanted since before we even opened our doors is I
Oh.
want to sell mints, escape mints,
Mints.
little packages,
Mints.
To
like
fit the
yeah,
the
Yeah.
little
name. I
candies,
love
yeah,
that.
escape mints. So you get out of the
Yeah,
room,
and
you
they
get a
say
free pack of
escape
escape
on
mints.
them.
That would be funny.
Do it.
It's because we like bad jokes and bad puns. Even our name is a pun. Like it's from this area, the geographical feature that Niagara Falls is part of is called the Niagara Escarpment. So we went with Niagara Escapement as a play on that. And an escapement is
Which
also
was
a little mechanism.
horrible.
Oh yeah.
It was horrible for SEO.
Mm.
Oh, I bet.
Mhm.
But it's great when someone takes
But
a
it
picture of
works
the Niagara
now.
River and tags us.
Fair
Yes.
enough. Now you also have event space. I mean, you mentioned that. How often does that get rented and used?
I would say on the weekends, it's about 50% of the time that we have it rented
Okay.
out. We could definitely push more marketing for it if we wanted to, but we don't see as much of a benefit in it as marketing the Dungeons and Dragons camps or the one shots that we do in there as well.
Mm.
We have a lot of our own things that we do in there. For the last 3 years, we've been playing Dungeons and Dragons on Mondays. So it's definitely more beneficial to put an escape room in that space if you have the budget and time to
Mhm.
build an escape room there. However, if you don't have a great living room and you want to have private events and you have an extra space you're not building in an escape room yet, why not?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, don't tell our third partner we built the party room because we wanted a cool place to play with our friends.
I think he knows by now.
But we've also had, and we know it's a good business model. It's just we have to find that brain space to fully develop it. Is having those party spaces means we can accommodate larger groups of kids for birthday parties.
Yeah.
And my best advice for any new escape room owner is make sure you have at least one thing available for large groups of 10 to 12-year-olds. Most escape rooms aren't designed for 10 to 12-year-olds, and they're just going to scream and break your stuff when that birthday party comes in. But we get tons of calls for these parties, and that's not really what we're set up for. So we have this big space in the back that we can utilize. What we'd like to build is a pop-up escape room where we can change out the theme pretty quickly that would keep a dozen kids occupied and happy doing puzzle activities that's escape room adjacent, but without building them a dedicated escape room. So if you build an escape room
Okay.
for just 12-year-olds, it's only busy Saturday and Sunday. You don't get that weekday traffic as they're in school. Depending where you are in Florida, that might be a different feel, but for us, that's kind of, even with tourism, we wouldn't do well with large groups of kids during the week. It's only on the weekends.
Right.
So the party space, eventually, we want to be able to make it a modular kind of setup with lockable containers around the space that if you're here for a party, it doesn't matter. But if it's a kid's game and it's we have this gingerbread game that we can play and we can set it up in the room and the kids have stuff to do and keeps them busy. You'd have a game master helping them out, but it's not the same as, a $15,000, $20,000 build out for an escape room that's just for kids. It's something
Right.
that's modular.
So what is that gingerbread challenge? The great gingerbread challenge.
That
Oh,
was
the great
something.
gingerbread show. Go ahead, Rob.
We have some friends that are school teachers. One of them's a principal, and they both expressed interest in being able to deliver an escape room to schools. And of course, that's difficult. Like I think when Derek had presented it to us, it was there's going to be 120 kids playing the game over 2 hours. It's like, oh, that's different than an escape room.
Right.
So we riffed around on some ideas, and like primarily the first thing we did is look at which puzzles are the most accessible to that age group. This is like grade 5s through 8. So we took away anything that had too many layers in it. We wanted to have some fun with it. We found our teacher friend went through like the curriculum requirements. So we tried to make puzzles that fit the curriculum requirement. And Cecilia and I built out 9 little stations that are lock boxes and a little standee with information on it. And a group of kids would be at each table at the same time. They'd solve the puzzle, open the box, get a piece of paper out of it. Then they'd go to the next box and go. And once they collected all 9, there was a meta puzzle that utilized all 9 pieces of paper. And we were a little stressed delivering this to a large group for the very first time. We developed it in about 2 weeks because why not? And it went over really, really well. We did a couple of adjustments, ran it again at another school. Think, oh, this works. This is really
Nice.
cool. The kids seemed engaged and interested. And even if you had to nudge them to the answer, the kids had a lot of fun with it. And I think what helped is we made the theming a little juvenile. The gingerbread man has been kidnapped. You're trying to rescue the gingerbread man, but the puzzles didn't talk down to them. The puzzles still required that process, just without being too difficult. And
Yeah.
honestly, if I presented those 9 puzzles to most adults that aren't escape room experienced, they'd probably have that same challenge level that the kids had. So it's a really nice experience and something else that we can offer, but it's not something we've pushed tremendously yet, but we've got it available. It's something that we can offer as we go forward.
Yeah.
Okay,
Cool.
so now how do I get that? That sounds awesome. I'm in central Indiana. And so we've had the school here ask me a couple times, hey, can you come and run your escape room here? And I go, I 8 people. Like, no, I can't.
Not how it
Yeah.
works.
Takes all month, every
I think it's flipping it a little bit, because when you're making escape rooms, we try really, really hard not to have like puzzle hunt style puzzles in them or puzzle magazine style puzzles. You want it to be this 3-dimensional space. But when you get to this school package where it's little stations, it's perfectly fine to go back to that puzzle hunt style where I'm solving a thing, collecting a bit, solving a thing and collecting a bit. Almost like a scavenger hunt, except you're setting them on a path. They're all at a station. They just rotate around those stations. And the flow worked really well.
Chris created, what's the large group game that you do at conferences?
Yeah, I call it just creating a new campground. And it's very similar, except we had these big boxes and there's envelopes in them. So as the teams or whatever will like get their envelope, they finish it, and then that opens up the next box. They just pull out their envelope, relock it for the next group. And
Yes.
it's
essentially
a pain to reset though. Shoot me
Yes.
now.
That's essentially what the Great Gingerbread Challenge is, actually. As the kids are solving these puzzles, they're getting these little square sheets of like Bristol board with more puzzle information on it, and it all comes together at the end to form a meta, of course. But yes, following them around, because it was just Rob and I that went to these schools. Like, we don't want to bring staff with us to deal with a bunch of children. We don't want to have to train them on a new game. We already know it inside and out, and we trust ourselves to deal accordingly as you would in a grade school. So we're running behind all these kids, resetting everything, like 10 seconds in between each station.
Well, they gave us
I am
teacher
on the same
helpers.
page.
They gave us teacher assistants that were supposed to be helping us with it. But did you know that if you give a teacher a brief break from their children, they just stop paying attention?
Yep.
They just leave.
Yep.
They left me alone with like 20 children the first school we went to, and it was like, oh my goodness.
Like, I'm not getting paid for this.
A kid would walk up to me and ask, can I go to the bathroom? I says, I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer that.
It is so true though. Every time I get invited to the school or something, I'm like, all right, I'm in charge now. I'm the captain. So
I may look responsible. I am not.
So Cecilia, you keep mentioning this Dungeons and Dragons day camp too. So I'm a camp guy, and I am interested. Tell me more about this.
Yeah, so actually, it was a really good thing for us to get involved with the school board, because we've always wanted to do a summer camp and a March break camp. We tend to be very busy when the weather's really bad. So at the end of the summer and through the winter, we're always busy. But during June, when school is first let out, and during March break, we don't tend to be as busy with the escape rooms. And like we've mentioned, we don't have very many things to offer to young people. Everybody wants to put their kids into an escape room, and everybody thinks that their kids are above average. And you put them into the escape room and they start to punch each other in the head maybe halfway through if there's not an adult in the room with them. And I've seen this happen in my 7.5 years of running rooms full time, sans 2020. At least a dozen times. Like, it's not an exaggeration that this happens very regularly if there's not a chaperone. However, when you put them in a group where they're meeting other people, they're trying to impress each other and they're not going to pull those shenanigans. So camp is the perfect way to get young people into these ways of thinking when they're nerdier or interested in different things. And we've noticed as well that there's been a lot of interest in Dungeons and Dragons since Stranger Things became so popular. So of course we know every man over, like, I'd say 35, maybe 40, knows or has played Dungeons and Dragons. A very, very typical thing for gamers to talk about. And now they're having kids, and their kids are getting to the age where they'll be able to start playing Dungeons and Dragons. But it's intimidating to get into. There's a lot to learn, even just on the character building side of things, let alone doing improv, following rules. So we decided that it would be a good idea to set up a day camp for kids to actually learn about how to play D&D. And then in the afternoons, they go through the scenario. So we have a very patient and professional dungeon master.
Not us.
Not us. He actually spent his university years at Brock teaching other people how to play D&D in his free time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And he did some project management for us last year as we were thinking about how do we do these camps? How do we make more things that are accessible to people that are too young to play the escape rooms on their own? He developed this fantastic camp for us, and we ran it as a test through March break. It sold out almost immediately.
Wow.
And at the end of camp, 5 of the 8 people that were there signed back up for a follow-up summer camp.
Nice.
It was
Awesome.
a great success. It was
And-
so much fun.
And what we love to see was, you know, the types of kids that would want to go to a D&D camp. They're the types of kids that they keep wanting to talk about D&D to their friends and family, and they keep getting told to shut up. No one else wants to hear about this. I was that kid, that single-minded focus, that nerdy ADHD passion on something, and no one wants to hear it. And then they come out here and they can talk about it, and someone's going to listen, and someone's going to participate with them. Exactly. And some of the kids that were like the most challenging to manage at the beginning of the week, by the end of the week, were like nice and calm. It kind of burnt off their energies because they
Nice.
got to do this thing that they were so hyper passionate about. It was lovely to see that. And I just saw these little versions of me running around. Where was that when I was 13?
Right?
My favorite part was at the end of camp on the Friday afternoon when their parents were all coming to pick them up, and they all traded phone numbers, and they all decided that they were going to start playing D&D together online on Saturday mornings. And it was like, this is exactly what I want to see come out of these things.
Nice.
I love how you were saying without a chaperone in the escape room, it's awful. So at our camp, we have an escape room, and I don't even do the cameras. I stand in there with them because it's really bad. But the worst I've had, I think it was 6 boys and 1 girl. And oh my goodness, those boys were doing everything they could to impress that girl. And she was the only one solving anything. They were all idiots, and she pretty much did the whole room herself. And so it's so funny.
I find the worst for that age group is the volume. And it's usually the girls, sometimes it's the boys, and sometimes it's the bachelorette parties too. But the volume just gets so much, you have to take the headphones off and you just revert to, I'm just going to watch.
Yeah.
As we're in one of the largest tourist areas, we do get a lot of non-English groups to our rooms. So one of the things you learn the fastest is to kind of read body language and the way people are interacting, even when you can't understand what they're saying, because you still have to be able to help them, right? And with kids, it's kind of like that too. So you just watch them as they go, and like, please don't break stuff, don't kill each other.
Right.
We'll help you get through this game.
Chris and I are camp guys. When I directed a day camp, we had our traditional outdoor camp doing all the traditional camp activities, but I also started a Harry Potter camp and a Percy Jackson camp, and those types of camp, we call them like the book camps, but those are not the same kids. Those kids that went to those book camps are not the ones that are going to go to the traditional camps, and vice versa. There might be a couple that bleed over, but it's nice that you have something that's available for them, for those kids, because traditional camp is not for them. And Chris is kind of the same way, where he is not the sports guy. He really enjoys the art stuff more. And so growing up, going to camp, there was no focus on that. It was all on the physical activities. And so it makes him a great camp director, to engage all the kids, not just those kids who are physically active all the time and want to do
Exactly.
that. So,
And we get that even from the sponsorship level. Well, people will want us to sponsor their hockey team or their baseball team. It's like, no, everyone has opportunities to do that. There's so much hockey and baseball and sports out there. We want to sponsor things for that other group. The kid with the Coke
Right.
bottle glasses and the inhaler, which was me, he needs that thing to do too, right? That activity. So we're more than happy to sponsor those alternate. Like the only sports team we sponsor is the local curling team for kids. And it's just so cute seeing their post and they're doing well at, you guys know what curling is, right?
yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Shuffleboard on ice.
You
But we
guys-
sponsor this league. They can't have ice down there; it's too hot.
We've never done it, but we know what it is.
So that's part of our, we want to support not just for our own business, but people that are asking for donations and to support their charitable things. We want to support those charitable things that align with our sensibilities and our core audience's sensibilities.
Sure. Yeah,
Like,
that's awesome.
We're into Fan Expo. We don't care if the Blue Jays win. Like that's not really. There's no overlap for us in that regard.
So I did this thing that maybe might work for y'all too. At my last camp that I was just at, we did a escape room design camp. We did it kind of I think it was once a week, and we were looking at changing up to being twice a week. In the evenings, the kids would come in and they would help design the camp. Like we did the rooms, so they got an idea what an escape room is, and then they helped create their own escape room that their parents were invited to, kind of this pop-up.
Like an after school.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's an idea, just pushing it that way. Might be something you want to look at, and when you guys figure it out even better, send me that info too, and
trade some ideas there.
That's right.
we met a woman who was the host of a kids show that was the concept, where the kids were building an escape room for their parents. So obviously,
was it the Create the Escape?
Yeah,
that's where I stole the idea from. I saw that on TikTok. I'm like, that is such a good idea.
I love
Steal
it
it from you. Yeah, that opportunity to talk about what we love. Woo.
Yeah, that's dangerous. And Rob has done something like this for new staff back in the day when we thought it might be a good idea to have more people help us with throwing ideas at the wall and designing the rooms and whatnot.
Honestly, it's one of the things I truly love about this industry. Like we talked about the difference between the business people and the escape room, like the design people. When you meet the design people, they're so willing to share and give advice. Every once in a while in one of the tech groups, I'll post a question because I don't understand something. And there's 2 different escape room owners in Toronto who just immediately will personally message me and walk me through what I need to do. And it's like, these are the top guys in their game and they're helping me with my tech.
That's awesome.
There
wonderful.
is essentially no gatekeeping in this community, and it's something that I love. Like every so often you'll come across someone that doesn't want to like share ideas or refer other businesses and stuff. And it doesn't feel the same as every other escape room owner that I've met. I love this community.
So of all the, I guess, non-escape room offerings that you have, would you recommend that other escape room owners add any of those?
The D&D camp has been our most financially successful.
Oh, by far. Yes, absolutely. Gearing something to younger people that wouldn't otherwise be able to come to your business and have their parents spend money on them is definitely the most financially beneficial. But I think that in a very, very general sense, if you're going to start adding things onto your business, you are simply creating another part-time job for yourself. So you really, really want it to be something that you are actually passionate about, that you care about. As a small business owner, we pour every single moment of our lives and every single ounce of our energy into the things that we already do. And to add to that, and kind of know in the back of your head, it might not even be successful. It has to be something that you enjoy. Otherwise, you are going to burn out and it's not going to succeed at the end of the day anyhow. And even if it does, it won't feel successful because it's just something you were doing for the sake of adding on to the business more so than adding on to the business. Like you want to, you have to want it.
Like little crochet characters.
Exactly.
There you go.
Well, even like we host one-shot Dungeons and Dragons, and we used to run a little bit of a limited campaign here. We don't make money off of running
don't
one
make money
shots
doing
and
that.
campaigns. No, but we want to be the place that people go to do it. So we manage it as best as we can.
Okay. Gotcha.
We want to give work to young DMs that are getting into the scene and they're doing really well and they enjoy running it. We want to have people filling up the building and coming for those auxiliary things. But as an owner, I also understand that you need to make money. So
Cool. Yeah, for sure. Hey, let's jump into the speed round. We love doing
we need
this.
a sound bite for that.
We do
The
need
speed
something,
round.
huh? So how this works is that each of you are going to give your own answers. You must keep your answers to one sentence. There is no expanding on it. Okay.
That's the hardest part.
Yep. If you have a run-on sentence,
how many
that's okay.
how many commas can this sentence have in it?
I am the master of run-on sentences.
Okay, well, wait a minute. So Chris will be asking the questions and he'll say who will start and we'll kind of go back and forth.
So just kind of after each other, you'll both answer the same questions as well. So Cecilia, we'll start with you here. What do you think is the best thing about owning an escape room business?
It's definitely the groupies.
The groupies.
No. All right. We'll flip flop it. Rob, you get to go first this time. What's the worst thing about owning an escape room business?
I look back at my previous career. Even my worst day running an escape room is better than my best days doing that. I have very few complaints. That was 2 sentences.
Very nice. We'll accept it.
Cecilia? Yeah, that's right.
The worst thing about owning an escape room business is still the groupies. These are the groupies that hang around after close, telling you that they're waiting for their ride, but you know that they haven't actually called their Uber yet, and they're just there to talk about like their favorite board games and musicals, and you're very tired because you've worked a 10 to 12 hour shift, but they're still there and they won't go home.
Wow.
That is the worst part.
That's funny.
I didn't know if you were going to say that or the 12-year-olds hitting each other.
Right.
You know?
All right, Cecilia, start us off with what is one of your favorite escape rooms that you've played?
Recently, one of the favorite escape rooms that I've done is a room called Motel Betty. What used to be Home Escape, it's now Home Venture. The room itself is a 2-hour-long horror experience during which you have a live actor in the game the entire time, literally chasing you through the game for about 30 to 40% of it. And your group is split up for at least 50% of the game. You are basically playing alone. It is extremely anxiety inducing. The set design was absolutely incredible. And an hour in an escape room sometimes does not feel like enough. So to be in that experience for nearly 2 hours to completion was very, very immersive for me.
Chris, I don't think she understands this game.
That's
No.
the one sentence.
No, that was one sentence. Lots of commas. So many commas.
Semicolons.
I love that.
So funny.
Like dashes.
Comma.
Dashes.
Ellipses.
I love it. How about you, Rob? Favorite escape
There was a
room?
low budget IKEA furniture Harry Potter room in a strip mall outside of Nashville with some of the best puzzles I've ever played.
Okay, cool.
Do you remember the name?
Nope.
The company was called
fair.
Escape Music City, and it was in Murfreesboro.
Oh, funny.
Mhm.
Yeah, just outside of Nashville.
And I felt bad. Like here they were, this low budget, just nothing would tell you this was going to be a great game. And it was better than most of the puzzles we played at the big name places in Nashville.
Wow.
And
fair.
I adored it.
Fair.
All right. Rob, what is one of the best skills to have as an escape room business owner?
Care about the player's experience.
Okay. And Cecilia?
Patience and the ability to learn new things constantly and be able to pivot from decision to decision.
Yep.
All right.
All right. Cecilia starts off with what is one thing you wish you would have known before starting a business?
SEO. And
Yeah.
in general, how long marketing actually takes.
Hmm.
And Rob?
Knowing how to delegate.
Hmm.
Don't
Sure.
have to do everything yourself.
What do you think is one piece of reference material or source of information that you would recommend? So book, video, course, Facebook group, something, just something you would recommend to someone starting out in the escape room business. And Rob, you get to go first this time.
I got two though. Sorry, there's two different aspects of the business.
Cool.
Playful Technology, Alistair's Patreon or YouTube channel for the tech side, and Puzzle Craft the book, which is a
Oh.
great look at. You don't want to take the puzzles out of there and use them as escape room, but it shows you the philosophy behind puzzles.
Okay.
And Cecilia?
I would say that I use Facebook groups more often than anything to reach out to real people in real time. So the Escape Room Enthusiasts group that is worldwide, as well as the Escape Room Startup and Owners group on Facebook, are both vast groups of knowledge, lots of escape room knowledge in there.
Cecilia, are you part of the female owners group too?
No,
What?
I will be in 10 minutes though.
Tina's like,
Kurt,
that
are
is
you part of
where
it?
She gets more information from them because they have to be
I bet.
owners
Oh,
to be in
women
there.
share.
Yeah. Join that. Sure.
Fantastic.
There's so many
Thank
good
you. I
Facebook
appreciate
groups.
that. Oh,
Kurt
so
and I are
many.
constantly, when we talk to each other, I'm like, it's on one of the Facebook groups. I just saw it. I don't remember which one.
So, as the admin for the Escape Room Enthusiast group, we used to always have where people would be advertising constantly their room. So we had rules that you couldn't do that. But then even on the tech and the owner side, people would post ads for the rooms. So I made a fake Facebook group called Escape Room Owners Advertising to Other Escape Room Owners, just to be an ass, so I could tag it when people did this. It has 1,000 followers.
Oh, wow.
Stupid group.
I love it. That is funny. All right, last question. Cecilia, you're going to start us off. What is one piece of advice you would give to an escape room business owner starting out?
Prepare for everything, but also nothing at the same time. There are no guarantees with what will happen.
I prepare for everything, but nothing.
Possibly the worst advice in the entire world. I have no idea how I own a business.
You're like Bruce Lee, be like water, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'm there
Part
for
of the
it.
reason she says that is when we were getting ready to do escapement, she had made list upon list upon list and was stressing out about every little detail. And I'm just going about, I'm just going to do this one thing right now and worry about this thing. And she over planned for everything. And a lot of it we ended up needing for sure. But there's a lot of things that you stress about that you didn't need to stress about because you can stress about that later, right? That's a tomorrow problem.
Cecilia, we have our lists, believe me. Yeah.
Perfect. You're on the right track.
There we go.
All right, Rob, how about you? One piece of advice?
Go to a lot of escape rooms and write down everything that pisses you off. Then don't do those things.
We've got that list as well.
Puzzle-wise, business-wise, exactly.
Yeah. Cool. So what's next for the business for Niagara Escapement?
Whatever we answer this with will likely change within the next little while. But we are definitely looking at doing more tech updates to the room to make everything cleaner and changing out our Christmas game to a more permanent scavenger hunt style room with more accessible things for larger groups of younger people so that we can start saying yes to those birthday party groups.
Yep. Yeah, kids love to hunt. Tina and I were not good with searching. A key could be on the desk and we'll be like, we need a hint. We cannot find this key. Yeah, it's right on the desk. Darn it. There it is.
Yes.
Every
We
time.
have done that.
Oh crap, I gotta bend down to get something.
That's the worst. That's the worst. But kids love it. So we were thinking if we have a room and they have a younger player, that we put in something where we can hide stuff around the room for them to collect. during the game that would somehow play within the storyline. And then if there's just adults, we wouldn't have that.
Yeah, yeah.
But-
Like Easter eggs for the young people, right? It's not
Exactly.
necessary for the puzzles, but it gives them things to do.
Exactly. Exactly.
We've been riffing on a crazy escape room adjacent idea, mostly because as I explore the tech, we're finding all these different things we can do, and you get these thoughts in your head, hard to get out. And one of
Mhm.
these days, I'd love to be able to do it, but we need more space, we need money, all those things to make it happen. But it's that
Oh.
culmination. It's the culmination of all the stuff we've learned watching groups and how they like to interact, and throwing it in with all that silly and kind of like a almost like a live action game show meets escape room
Mm.
feeling. We've heard about places like Bodeborg that are more physical. Five Wits we've played, and I really like the concept behind Five Wits, but I think they dropped the ball on. And I'm criticizing a highly successful company, but from like an escape room player's perspective, Five Wits wasn't as engaging as we thought it could be. But from a casual player's perspective, it's probably still too hard. So how do you find, something that's scalable that engages more people? Well, technology can do that, right? It can adjust its difficulty level as it goes. It can ramp up as it goes. Score-based models are an interesting thing to experiment with. What I really love to see
This
nowadays in escape rooms. Oh, go ahead.
this wasn't one of the one sentence answer questions, was it?
No, 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 no. As he leaves the room.
No, my earbud fell out. I was laughing so hard there.
Sorry, Rob, continue.
No problem. There's so many different directions that escape rooms are going in, or escape room adjacent games are going in. And the more you go outside your comfort zone on those, the more you learn about them. We went and did Wizard's Quest in Wisconsin last summer.
Love it.
What
Love
an
it.
amazing experience. All the way home, I'm thinking,
Yes.
oh, I could make this. But I would make it with little puzzles and things. And just your brain gets going in all these different ideas. And then, Five Wits does their thing. And even in the main escape room industry, you get the puzzle games where you're solving puzzles, and the other one where you're finding codes and stuff happens to you because you don't have to be clever to do those, right? That the game is
Yeah.
just going to happen one way or another. And a lot of people like those because there's wow. And I think that's haunt adjacent, where it's the experience more so than the puzzle that matters. Where what we make and we like to play are the puzzle matters. But that limits your accessibility. So how do you
Right.
implement these other things into your experiences so more people can have fun with them? I
sure.
know how to make a puzzle escape room. Do I know how to make a Wizard's Quest? Like, that's a fun challenge. Could I make a Five Wits type experience? Could I make a Over the Falls? We've got next door here that's way more of an experience than a traditional escape room. Those are cool. There's so much space to play, and I think it's fun when you see escape room people testing the waters to do different things. One of my favorite companies in Toronto, you play all their rooms in their business and you'll have completely different experiences in each. And some of them you will hate. It's like, that was horrible. I can't believe I did that. But he was brave enough to experiment and push the limits on a different direction for escape rooms. And it's really nice to see that. And we kind of want to do more of that ourselves.
There's
Right.
a mall that has a Five Wits in New York. It's not the Buffalo one. And there's a Museum of Intrigue, which is
We wanna
right
go
next
so
to
bad.
it. And
Yeah,
yeah,
we
so
wanna hit
it's a
that.
different take on it, but it's also escape room adjacent. And it's a really
Mhm.
interesting concept. We had fun there.
Yeah. And it's funny because we know other owners that they're so married to the first thing they came up with. And 10 years later, they're still making
Sure.
that same game over and over again with a different skin on it, and the puzzles aren't any different, the experience isn't any different. And I'd like to think that over our 15 rooms we've built, we've defined our own style and we've polished things and changed things along the path. And I think we see that from customers who speak about that. We had a group that was in our Christmas room, and they immediately said, "Oh, this is Rob and Cecilia." Like, they knew right off the
Nice.
bat
Signature.
that it felt like what we did. But we want to keep evolving and changing and trying different things within that space as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you both for being here and taking the time to share your experience with us. If somebody wants to follow what you do, reach out, what's the best way?
Facebook and Instagram are our most active social media platforms for sure. Every message that we get comes through directly to my phone, so I get it
Perfect.
immediately. We do keep our Google business up to date as well. So most of the places that you can find any business online, you'd be able to find Niagara Escapement.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you. This has been great. I still want to talk to you. So
Well, thank you so much for having us. Honestly, Chris, feel free to reach out in an email if you want to talk
Yeah.
more. As Curt can attest, we are very chatty people. We will just talk to you if you like.
I'm good with that. Yeah. So, but yeah, we are out of time, unfortunately, and so we will have to end here. This has been Curt and Chris. Thanks for joining us for another scrumptious episode of Mystery Soup. Until our next culinary concoction, may your clues be clear and your escapes be triumphant. Keep puzzling, my friends.
See ya.